Hello and most welcome to 1879 of the series. We will today continue with Francis Lin, the excellent article Wittgenstein on the impossibility of following a rule only once. I think, Kalle, you need to be muted. We talked about last time the impossibility of following a rule only once. And one of the hints that made us understand that it is impossible to have a rule only once is the understanding that in a rule there is both a positive side and a negative side. So you are already doing two things. Two rules already, and we then also come to the understanding that global reality in the Carlo-Ruvelian way holds. All aspects of reality come to play. The negative definition, so to speak, or the negative rule, covers everything in the universe. All relations that could ever be, excluding not a singular one. Not a single one is excluded. And that goes also for somebody being 2 meters tall. And I think that understanding came to me shockingly, all of a sudden, and quite shockingly. The old Wittgenstein, so to speak, or the earlier thinking of Wittgenstein in TLP, saw all statements as atomic, and that they were covering both negative and positive aspects at the same time. Something that, when you really think of it, doesn't really make sense. It is nonsensical. The pointing of Augustinian is also a negative pointing, and it involves an incredible amount of knowing of things and relations. All relations in the universe this can also be aptly compared to Julian Barber, who sees time as a consequence of all relations in the existing world. Well, for that matter, non-existent world as well. And as we brought up in the previous article in 1878 by Kelkhofer, The washing line is an impossibility in itself. It does not participate. All the relations in the universe are not there. And I would say the same goes for the so-called limited grammatical rules that, so to speak, excludes all aspects of the language game, which is much more than what we can explicitly know, point to, extensively explain, so to speak. It is covering much, much more. It would be actually quite fun. For me, it no longer makes any sense that the grammar of language should be explicit, because language itself is partly explicit. How then could the grammar be explicit? We end up in a Gödelian paradox. It just doesn't make sense. I will continue on page 101, where we ended. In sections 3 and 4 above, various interpretations by other commentators on PI 199 were reviewed. Now we can see why they are all problematic. Ginet's examples aim to show that a creature can follow a rule only once, because it can have the intention to follow the rule. But if the creature only follow the rule once, then it would not know what the rule is. So it could not even intend to follow it. McGinn messes things up by putting PI 199 and PI 204 together and coming up with an interpretation the multiplication thesis. That there must be some rules which are multiply obeyed if a person is to grasp any. which lands him into a lot of trouble. His related interpretation of PI 199 alone, which is that there must be many occasions of rule following, possibly distributed over several individuals, well, is problematic too, for he rejects it as well as the multiplication thesis just mentioned as being false. The real reason for McGinn's being in a quandary is that he fails to see that the not one person once remark is in fact a grammatical one. Grammatical one. Grammatical.
Grammatical.
Grammatical. As for the indirect interpretations of the not one person once remark, that problem lies in the indirect method. These commentators want to establish another thesis first. For instance, that any rule following must be social or must involve regularity. And then deduce the not one person once remark from it. But they fail to see that the not one person once remark is true on its own.
On its own, true on its own.
And that it needs not to be deduced from other theses. Their endeavor has resulted in some controversial and unnecessary thesis. All in all, the not one person once remark plays an important role in Wittgenstein's later philosophy. As early as 1929, Wittgenstein realized that the Tractarian theory of language is deeply problematic, and in particular realized that the idea that elementary propositions are independent of another is wrong. This latter realization is surely highly important, well, to say the least, and it would be inconceivable that Wittgenstein did not want to write about it in PI. In PI, he could deal with the idea of independent elementary propositions directly, as he did in 1929 and 1930. By reminding us of the fact that names have meanings only in a system of contrasts. And by showing, consequently, that an elementary proposition cannot be independent of others. But in PI, Wittgenstein sees that this idea can be treated from the more general viewpoint of rule following. For using names is an instance of rule following. This treatment achieves simplicity and elegance. Wittgenstein's philosophical method is admirably powerful.
Powerful, powerful.
And strong. The Tractarian theory of language looks great and important, but is destroyed by the simple grammatical fact that rule following cannot be one-off. Expressed in PI 199. And it turns out to be nothing but a whole house of cards.
House of Cards.
Wittgenstein's philosophical investigation is a grammatical one. Only by trying to see that Wittgenstein's remarks concerning concrete philosophical problems are grammatical and indisputable, that is, only by strictly following his avowed way of doing philosophy can we have a chance of achieving a real understanding of his philosophy.
Real. Real.
And complete. I say thank you very much, Francis Lin. Absolutely excellent article. That terminates the paper at page 152. Not a very long article, but so condensed and so aptly. It cuts like a knife. And of course, at the very nexus is PI 199. In PI 199, the Tractarian view of language crashes because of one singular thing. A rule cannot be followed only once. It doesn't even make sense to say such a thing. And I would say, as is mentioned here at the end of the conclusion, in PI, but it is destroyed by the simple grammatical fact that rule following cannot be one-off as expressed in PI 199, and it turns out to be nothing but a house of cards. I would say that PI 199 leads to tsunami that drags all the idea of explicit rules for language, the idea that time could be separate from all the events, and the idea that you could have one rule to follow only once. It also brings within it, in this tsunami-like shockwave, the classical laws of physics that are eternal and actually never need to be applied, not even once. They are still there. Nothing needs to be happening in the universe for there to be classical laws and classical time. They have an independent private language character of themselves, which we know from other paragraphs is to be nonsensical. It's a sharp statement. We go to page 149. It's a bit further down. is rule following a custom, which is said almost to the very end, the penultimate line. This remark is very interesting because at the first outset, it seems to be not a grammatical one. But the key here in 1999 is that he uses customs in italics. So he doesn't use the word custom in the regular sense. So it's more of a practice. And we all know what practices are. They are mostly implicit. Those are the movements of the fantastic mobiles made by Pfeiffer, the Swiss professor. They move, and this is how they learn. It's also in their movement that they keep knowledge, memory. It is also, amazingly enough, in the movement that they do futuring. So they start planning as well. That is rule following. If we go further down on the same page, 150, we are now. Go down to conclusions and discussions. And on the second line under the heading, we find first, I show that the not one person once remark is a grammatical one on rule following, and that it describes a necessary condition rule, which specify a condition which must be satisfied in order for the expression to follow a rule to have sense. So it's also a learning to know what a rule, what the hell a rule is. This is hugely ignored by Augustine. And it was also ignored by Wittgenstein, the early Wittgenstein. But it takes a lot even to understand what a rule is. And it cannot be explicit. It needs to be practiced over and over again. Iteration. And by doing it more and more, like you learn ballet. I think it's a rather good example. It's absolutely absurd to say, oh, that's a ballet movement we never saw before. It's never been practiced and just came up there. Oh, no. And that wouldn't be in concert of the rest of the ballet academy or the ones participating at stage. It wouldn't be understood. What do I mean by that? Nobody would be able to dance with you or follow suit. We do things in life. We act. And what Francis Lin and Wittgenstein is bringing us back to is to the origin, so that we can strengthen language. We can become less nonsensical, and we can once more feel a point to what we're saying, because no exaggeration, but in modern day and life, the point has disappeared. We use language in a way that is parasitic, and it quickly turns into nothingness. We need to do things once more to be active, and then abstraction will be possible again, intellectualization, and we can be living more wholly, more right hemisphered, I'd say as well, to bring in Ian McGilchrist. And now I want to bring in Kalle Lundahl, who's urging to say something. Welcome, Kalle.
Page 19. Page 19. This PDF version.
What would be that, 148 or?
151.
151. Okay, thanks.
So here. So let me read it. But if the creature only followed the rule once, then it would not know what the rule is. So it could not even intend to follow it. So what does this phrase mean? Actually, you explained it already.
But yeah, go at it still.
So there is no point of separating intention and doing something, like your ballet metaphor, Hans.
Oh yeah.
Rules are also non-rules, so to say. That is, to express negatively. If you go to left, like in a dance, that means that you should not go to right. That is, there is always a negative rule. At the same time, I think that is what.
Yes. You're disappearing a bit. Can you please speak into the microphone?
So if you in the dance go to left, that means that you should not go to right. That is always two rules at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think that is what Lee means with this phrase. So I don't know why he takes up intention in this phrase. Why does he take up intention? I would not intend to go to right because I know the rule is to go to left. And the rule said that I should always go to left.
Yeah. Yeah. In a nutshell.
Because that is simply put that. Because every rule that says that I should go left, for instance, that is already a second rule in itself. Not to go to right. So I think that is the if you would like to have one keyword from this paper, that is negatively or negativity.
Oh yeah.
Negative rule. So that's the there is something that, however, I love this paper because it made that really.
Could I possibly add something here?
Yes,
that struck my mind, and that is complementarity in quantum mechanics is also this. It's two things happening at the same time, so to speak. By saying that something is a particle, you exclude wave. And wave, therefore, oddly enough, is participatory. It's not outside. It's global.
Yes, I could actually quote Niels Bohr. Let me see. Let me take the quotation. I'm working on a research paper. And this is a quotation by Niels Bohr that McGilchrist likes. Let me see if I can open it. So this is the quotation from Niels Bohr. An ordinary truth is a statement whose opposite is a falsehood. A profound truth is a statement whose opposite is also a profound truth.
Yeah, very good.
So this is actually a variation of Wittgenstein's or Lin's interpretation of Wittgenstein.
Yeah. Excellent. Wow.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Both sides of the rule is strengthening the rule. Both the yes and the no. Both what actually happens and what doesn't take place.
Mm.
The yin and the yang, if you like.
Let me see. Page 90 on the same page, we had another. And this one. So I have commented in past that Lin is close to the is very close to analytic philosophy, and here this shows that too. But I fail to see that not one person remark is true on its own. So this one true on its own, that is very highly suspicious. It smells of analytic philosophy.
Yeah.
So once again, I affirm that Lin is almost analytic philosopher.
Yeah.
But he's a good analytic philosopher, if he is an analytic philosopher. He's an excellent analytic philosopher.
Yeah, definitely.
Or he's in the borderline between, because Lin rejects, or more or less rejects, proofs for an empiricism. But that's both good and bad. Because he wants to make Wittgenstein make sense on its own. That's great. But that has also its downside, of course.
Yeah.
But let's end here, Hans. I must go now.
Wow, so happy that you've been following here with this marvelous article by Francis Lin. An enormous thank to Francis Lin, wherever you are. It has been incredibly informative and I would say world-changing article. And it brings in so much of things that we studied before. Roberto Unger and Lee Smolin. Julian Barber, the triangulation, where everything is participatory. Carlo Rovelli and his relational quantum mechanics. Niels Bohr, as you mentioned. But we also been bringing in from neurology the development of artificial intelligence in Pfeiffer, what we learned from Terry Mark-Starlow, Barbara Tversky, Lisa Friedman-Bartet, affordances by J.J. Gibson and Tony Shimero, chaotic theory by Gleick, what we learned from Benoit Mandelbrot, that all relations are nonlinear, and therefore all relations and laws are global, taking everything into consideration. And it fits so well with the explanation of Francis Lin. The negativity is as close you can come to everyday language. And all of a sudden, we are so much closer in being able to explain quantum mechanics to the layman. A lot of that is definitely thanks to Francis Lin. But also, let's not forget Goldfarb, Paul Johnston, Joachim Schulte, Edmund Dane, and many more. Thank you very much for listening in. Have a very pleasant morning, day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. And thanks everyone who's been writing and contributing.